this episode, we focus on a decision that seems administrative on the surface but has deep security consequences: how long you keep your logs and why. Retention is not just a storage setting. It determines whether you will be able to answer critical questions weeks or months after an event occurs. Many cloud incidents are not discovered immediately, and some only come to light during routine reviews or external audits. If logs have already been deleted by the time you begin investigating, you lose visibility into what actually happened. Setting retention intentionally means aligning log lifetimes with realistic detection timelines, regulatory obligations, and business needs. Beginners often assume that short retention saves cost and long retention solves everything, but the real answer is more strategic. Retention should be designed so logs remain useful evidence across both incident response and audit processes. Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is a companion to our course companion books. The first book is about the exam and provides detailed information on how to pass it best. The second book is a Kindle-only ebook that contains 1,000 flashcards that can be used on your mobile device or Kindle. Check them both out at cyber.author.me in the Bare Metal Study Guide series. Incident timelines vary widely depending on the nature of the threat and the maturity of monitoring systems. Some suspicious activities are detected quickly through alerts, while others remain hidden for extended periods. Investigation questions might arise months after a configuration change or an identity compromise occurred. If your log retention period is shorter than your average detection window, you risk losing the very data you need. Beginners sometimes underestimate dwell time, which is the period between initial compromise and discovery. Attackers often move slowly and quietly to avoid detection. Intentional retention planning accounts for this reality and ensures that logs remain available long enough to reconstruct past activity accurately. Audit timelines introduce another layer of complexity because compliance requirements often mandate minimum retention periods. Regulatory frameworks and contractual obligations may require that certain logs be retained for specific durations. Investigation questions during audits often focus on demonstrating that security controls were functioning and monitored over time. If logs are unavailable, it becomes difficult to prove due diligence or control effectiveness. Beginners should understand that audits are not only about passing inspections, they are about demonstrating accountability. Retention policies that align with audit requirements reduce friction and uncertainty during review cycles. Different log types may warrant different retention periods based on their investigative value. Identity and control plane logs often have long-term relevance because they document structural changes and access patterns. Data access logs may require extended retention when dealing with highly sensitive information. Network logs, on the other hand, can be high volume and may require more selective retention strategies. Investigation questions guide these decisions, focusing on which evidence will matter most over time. Beginners sometimes assume a single retention period should apply to all logs, but thoughtful differentiation improves both cost efficiency and investigative readiness. The key is aligning retention duration with risk and impact. Cost considerations are inevitable when discussing retention, especially in large cloud environments where logs accumulate rapidly. However, cost optimization should not undermine security visibility. Investigation questions that cannot be answered due to missing logs may result in far greater financial impact than storage expenses. Beginners should approach cost trade-offs strategically, considering tiered storage options that allow older logs to remain accessible at lower cost. This approach balances financial responsibility with investigative preparedness. Intentional retention means evaluating cost alongside risk, rather than defaulting to the shortest possible time frame. Retention policies must also consider legal hold scenarios, where logs need to be preserved beyond their normal life cycle due to litigation or regulatory investigation. Investigation questions during legal proceedings often require historical evidence that spans extended periods. Without flexible retention mechanisms, logs may expire automatically before such needs arise. Beginners should recognize that retention is not static. It may need to adapt when circumstances change. Designing retention with override capabilities ensures that logs can be preserved when required without disrupting normal policy. This flexibility strengthens resilience against unexpected legal demands. Another important dimension of retention is ensuring that logs remain searchable and usable over time. Retaining logs for years has little value if they cannot be queried efficiently. Investigation questions often require filtering by identity, resource, or time frame, and retention planning should account for accessibility. Beginners sometimes assume that storing logs is enough, but usability determines their practical value. Archiving strategies should preserve indexing or metadata so that older logs remain actionable. Intentional retention, therefore, includes both duration and retrieval considerations. Retention decisions also interact closely with log integrity controls. If immutability settings enforce write-once storage for a defined period, retention must align with that duration. Investigation questions rely on confidence that logs have not been altered during their lifetime. Premature deletion or modification can compromise trust. Beginners should ensure that retention and immutability policies are synchronized to prevent accidental gaps. Proper alignment ensures that logs remain both intact and available throughout their intended life cycle. Data minimization principles must also be considered when setting retention. Logs can contain sensitive details such as user identifiers and network addresses. Investigation questions may require these details, but excessive retention without purpose can create privacy concerns. Beginners should balance investigative utility with responsible data stewardship. Retention policies should clearly define which logs are necessary and why, avoiding unnecessary accumulation. Intentional design ensures that logs serve security objectives without introducing unintended risk. Communication and documentation are essential components of effective retention strategy. Investigation questions during audits often include how retention decisions were made and whether they are consistently enforced. Clear documentation demonstrates that retention policies are deliberate rather than arbitrary. Beginners should view documentation as part of security design rather than bureaucratic overhead. When policies are documented and communicated, teams understand expectations and can align their actions accordingly. Consistency across environments strengthens credibility and reduces confusion. Monitoring retention compliance ensures that policies are functioning as intended. Logs should not disappear unexpectedly due to misconfiguration or oversight. Investigation questions about missing logs often reveal retention misalignment rather than deliberate deletion. Regular validation confirms that logs are retained according to policy and that archival systems are operational. Beginners should treat retention monitoring as routine maintenance rather than a reactive task. Ongoing oversight preserves confidence in logging systems. Setting retention intentionally so logs remain useful across incident and audit timelines transforms logging from temporary data collection into a durable security asset. By aligning retention with detection windows, regulatory requirements, cost considerations, and legal scenarios, you ensure that evidence remains available when needed most. For new learners, the central lesson is that retention is a strategic decision that directly affects investigative capability and organizational accountability. Thoughtful planning, synchronization with integrity controls, and clear documentation create a logging environment that supports both operational resilience and compliance confidence. In the cloud, where activity is constant and change is rapid, well-designed retention policies ensure that history remains visible and actionable long after events occur.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit baremetalcyber.com.